Right, welcome everybody to my demonstration night session. And today I'm going to take you to Anglesey, to Penmon Point and Penmon Lighthouse. So this is absolutely stunning, wonderful area. Some of you have been painting with me there on plein air. I have two photographs today because I have two slightly different compositions, two slightly different layouts. So my plan is to combine two photographs and have my own version of it. Now I have a grey background, again to build up the colors. And because my format is quite elongated, I'm going to be mixing my colors on the side here. So what my initial thoughts are, is I love the bottom part of this photograph, where the rocks are coming from the bottom right corner, and then leading to the lighthouse, and then coming through the clouds, and then kind of going a little bit more here in the rocks and the famous Puffin Island. But I like the position of the lighthouse a bit more further and possibly elongated that rock. And also there is another famous buoy there, so it's quite a lovely little red mark there. So I wanted to have that one painting as well. So let's see what we can do here. So if I'll start from sketching with my brush straight away, the reason I have one glove on my hand is I'm going to be using a sponge later on as well. So I'm not going to get too mucky. Right, so I'll start with some white, and I'm going to go for some ultramarine, maybe slightly more darker color, and a dab of maybe red to make it slightly more violet-y. And let's just check it against my board so I can see the color, or if it's going to be too light. No, that's okay. So let's decide on my horizon. I think we'll need to go slightly lower, tiny bit lower here. Okay, so nice elongated composition, really exciting. Okay, a tiny bit more white here. And let's work into some of these rocks and the lighthouse position. So I think I want my lighthouse as a big box, probably somewhere tiny bit more from here. So if I were to look at it, okay, so slightly wider, I'm just going to find out roughly shape. If I need to move it, I'll change the position of it, but that's my option first, option number one here. And as I said, I like the rocks at the bottom here from a different photograph. So I'll be looking at the pool of water to find out the shape of the rocks. Okay, so maybe something coming across there. So there's lovely pools which come with the water, with the tide. And there will be some space left for reflection of the lighthouse in the water, and some smaller, much more shallower rocks. Okay. I'm going to work into my silhouettes of the rocks first before I decide on my Puffin Island and the horizon. Let's fit some of these big areas here. Okay, some nice character rocks, and how they zigzagging. Right, if I'll pick up a tiny bit more stronger color. Okay, so it's not disappearing when I'm sketching. Okay, I quite like a shallower, again, nice protruding rock. It's quite treacherous water here, that's why the lighthouse is on the side here. because we do have very deep water in there. Right, if I'll just attach this one quickly. Some tape is here. So then I have one image in front of me here, one on the side. So I've got two different, slightly different compositions in front of me. Okay, so let's see. I think I'm going to bring this rock further into almost towards the middle of the painting. So those are my decisions now. Okay, and that's going to shallow down and go up. Now will be a reflection of that same rock. Okay. And well, I have my pale blue here. I might very quickly plan my shapes with some fellow blue and white, because there are loads of similar lines here, similar darknesses, but if I'll work with a tone, I don't know if I'll get the right color straight away or not, but if I'll plan my tones here. Okay, so that will be a little bit of blue reflecting in the water, a bit of sky reflecting in the water. Sometimes that's much easier to work. And that pool of water is going to have some paler color as well. Okay, maybe I like to pick up a bigger brush. Even better. Okay, so if I pick up a flat, large brush, go for slightly stronger color quickly. Okay, so I can sketch not just in lines, but with shapes. Yeah, we'll have some sort of depth with a bit more violet color. So I'm using ultramarine and cadmium red to have slightly more deeper shade of blue. So I'm in a way straight away painting here, but that was my quick version of identifying it. Okay, back to pale blue to find some of the gaps, to find the shape of the light on the water next to the lighthouse. I can still tweak it and amend it. So if I'll work with big shapes, okay, those could be my rocks standing out. A little more lighter tones for the water. So because I have quite a dark grayish background, that's built up the structure of everything quite quickly. Okay. I will work into much better color and variations of it and playfulness of it. But so far I'm looking for big shapes of light. So I looked at some cooler tones. Now my sky will have loads of light as well. But what I can do with the sky so far, I can have a little bit of a lighter tone. If I keep it watery, I can just set some of the directions and then work into them afterwards. So we've got some sort of almost like a swirl. Got that shape of the sky, and some of these clouds are separating, and all of these ones reaching out for each other in the middle. Okay, must be some sort of weather front or how the clouds are gathering. And it also gives me an opportunity, so my gray background already supports the tones. I'll probably work into, okay, so that's good. And what else I'm going to work into? There will be a few more smaller pools of water here, that's okay. My lighthouse is going to have some lighter tones as well and some cooler tones. So maybe I can do some cooler tones now. It doesn't mean they're going to be dark. And then I can work into other tones afterwards. Okay, so if I'll do all of my lighthouse together in a similar color and a similar darkness, I can work with the rest afterwards. I'll let it dry. Okay, and I'll probably do the same for the shadow. So I'll be actually, so that's in a way, that's just the color of the water here anyway. That's okay. Right, so my lighter cool tones, lighter cool shapes are ready. Right, so now let's mix some warmer colors for some of the rocks, for some of the foreground rocks, just as an overall shape. Let's find those warm colors. So again, if I'll start with white, I just realized I don't have violet on my palette. I know I can mix it, but I can also have quite a bit of it out of fresh paint. I'll use some ochre, and I'll use that violet, and possibly a small amount of crimson to make the pinkish sunset reflecting into my stones. Now that's quite a dark tone, so if I just place it on the board, it does appear quite dark. So I'm on the right track, but I'm on the wrong tone. So all I need is to top up my white. So let's top it up on the paint, on the palette, and on the paint mixture as well. So here we go. A little bit of warmth and some more light. Great. Let's place some here. That's it. That's a nice color. Maybe slightly more pink. Tiny bit more pink. If I'm adding more pigment, it makes the color tiny bit darker. So I'm again adding slightly more white here as well. So let's just play with some of the strokes. So somewhere in this area, we've got some of those pinks. Just going to check the consistency of the paint is all similar, so it's not too runny. Okay, so I have some tops of the rocks, almost like the surface of them, so which lit up by that color. So that's why I'm using quite flat type of strokes to represent those corners. And then probably close to me, I've got much more wider, open up sides, so they might be slightly differently painted. Okay, I've got a nice open shape here. It might have slightly different colors there as well, but overall, I'm planning its form. Okay, I think that was supposed to be, that outline was my light area as well, which could have slightly different color, maybe even more white, dab of ochre. It might appear quite light, but let's just see. I think by the time I paint around other colors, it will settle in into that bolder highlight. Okay, that's, I quite like that. And that immediately gives me an opportunity to place some other lights elsewhere. Okay, and if I'll go for a little more neutral tone, if I'll go for some more violet, again within those three colors, bit of ochre, crimson. So if I'll go more violetty, it's not overly fine tone from the previous tones, tiny bit more violet. Okay, so I can go for most of my rocks. So I'll have almost like the medium tone for them. So I haven't got any darks left. My initial gray looks a better tone for some of the darks, but at least I'll get some of the medium tones sorted. Some of the darks as well on my rocks are the seaweed, which been left behind by the water receding. Okay, I think that rock might have more darker browns and maybe even cooler blues, but this one is good to have more violets. And maybe even violet blues if I'll go for slightly more. Oh, that's quite a lot. Okay, let's get back to other colors. Again, back to white, back to ochre, some crimson. Okay, some violet. So the blues there, but not in such a big quantities. That's quite a nice color as well. Quite a nice stone-like, and that's nice darkness as well. Right, in that area you can't see it. It's reflecting. Let's see, it's there. That's better. I think in some places the board bends slightly and it's reflects, and it's harder to see. Okay. Tiny bit more darkness. Okay, with blue and violet. Okay, that's quite nice. Shadow, I think that shadow could come actually in the water next to some of these rocks. So I'm just testing my colors. If I'm going for one and I didn't get it right straight away, I'm trying to see where I can use this color. I think that would be a nice big chunk of it somewhere here. Maybe some of the seaweed will be coming up. If I'll do some of it protruding as shadows, I can then find lighter tones and paint lighter tones on top. So build my shapes from the darkest ones. Okay, maybe just use a sponge to soften some of its edges. I don't want them to be too perfect, perfectly sharp. So my sponge is just helping to do some softness. Okay, I can see it better there. Okay. Right, let's come back to the lighter tones of my rocks. Again, back to that violety pink, more of a medium tone. Got carried away with some of the shadows. So let's get back to some of my medium tone. That's quite a nice color. Okay, so that's could be all blocked here. Okay, that light could be reduced. No. Where are we going to have it? Okay, some interesting formations of these rocks, how they merge in and out of each other, how they change their slopes. So far I have reasonable chaos of shapes. I'm looking for overall feel of it. Okay, right, let's have a look at this rock. That will have quite a bit of darkness there. Again, it's probably looking very similar to my background grays, which is good. I like that tone. It means that when I'll come back to painting the water, that will need to be much more lighter. For it to stand out, for the rock to be much more darker. And also the rock has much more darker shadows. Okay, I still like them violety warm tone as a shadow. So that's better. And then some of those similar tones could be on the rock again, maybe seaweed. It's giving that color or pattern. So lovely rock pools are slowly going to become alive. Tiny bit more darker tone underneath. Okay, and my reflection is going to come lower. Now reflections in the water tend to be darker than the actual objects they're reflecting. Okay. So those shadows could slowly merge together. Okay, any other shadows and big shapes? It's a lovely brush to do rocks because it gives me loads of straight corners. I just need to watch out for not making too many similar marks. Might fill most of my gaps of gray here and see the whole picture within that tone. Okay, so slightly lighter coming out further. That's a bit better. So I'm trying to look for not just color but tone, tone, tone. If I hit the right color, that's fantastic. If I hit the right tone straight away, that's even better. But both, if I misjudged the color or tone, I can come back and tweak it. So if one of them is done right first time round, that's brilliant. I think that darker tone here is a little bit too strong, so I'm immediately trying to reduce it, the same as some of these paler tones. Now, once I'm putting something light on top of them, it does look like they're coming out from the water. Again, slightly reflecting for you, but when it's not, I'll start seeing them, yeah, quite nicely appearing here. I'm not too sure about this abrupt corner, so let's have a little look at that. Okay. Right, so I've done quite a lot of, paid quite a lot of attention to the bottom part of the painting, because I think, well, at least at the time, for me, it was a more complex section, maybe slightly more shadows somewhere here. So it's time to start paying some attention to the top part of the painting and maybe reevaluate the light as well on the water. So at this stage, the sky and the still darker water where I put some highlights, they're not light enough yet, create quite dark, quite gloomy atmosphere. Just the rocks so far have started to be lit up by the sunshine, yeah? So I'm going to start looking more and more into lighting up the sky. So let's wash the brush. Let's top up. Let's get a fresh palette here. Palette. I'm using some smaller palettes so I can fit them in on my screen here. Also, it's nice and quick to keep the colors clean. To show you some progressions. Right, so let's have some larger strokes again. Okay, some white. I'm gonna go for fresh blue turquoisey light for the sky itself, and then I'll work into some of the clouds. And maybe at the same time, if I'll have similar colors, I'll apply it on the water as the colors will start reflecting. So I'll have some emerald green and some phthalo blue, slightly stronger blue to mix those colors. Just going to mix it well so there is no streaks. And that color is going to go on the lower part of my sky. Might look very light as a starting point. I'm going to persevere. And somewhere here, I'll have all those lights. Coming in between the clouds. And then immediately I need to mix some more paint, right? I don't want any ochre there. And I'll go for more phthalo blue. bit more stronger in darkness. Still some emerald green. So it's a bit of a combination. Let's just see how it will mix, and maybe slightly too dark than I wanted. Yes. Double white. So my sky is getting slightly darker towards the middle. So if I'll keep topping it up, I want the top part of the sky to be a bit more stronger here. In blue. And I think I might succeed with doing it better if I use my sponge. So what I've done with my sponge, I have soaked it earlier, but I'm just going to show you how I do that. Just put it, all of it in the water, take all of the moisture out, load my sponge with a color. Let's say I've got my emerald green and fellow blue. Okay, some more white, I think might need it here. I think the strokes come out from it a little bit more fresh, a bit more softer, easier to blend. Maybe because the sponge keeps more moisture on it. It's got much more softer texture of its material. Okay, so some slightly darker blues. I might paint more of the sky actually than we see, and I'll put the clouds on top. I think that would be an easier way of doing it. Otherwise, little gaps between the clouds is much harder to paint separately as gaps. And let's do the one in between. I'll paint over the lighthouse, it's okay as well. I can always bring its shape back. Quite like some of that light sky, but so far it's too far apart from my darker tones. So let's mingle it together. Let's make sure they do become part of one another. Okay. It's quite nice. Yeah, quite like that. And while I have some of that color in my sponge, I think I'm ready to put it on my water as well. Just need to top it up. So emerald green and fellow blue. I'm going to make, I haven't decided, well, in my mind I have decided where I'm going to put my puffin island, but I haven't put it on my painting yet. Okay, I think I need more light here. That's not going to be light enough. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think maybe brush here. A smaller brush. More white. Okay, so the lighter tone against the horizon. It's good, and maybe some more lighter tone somewhere here. Let's just sharpen that line a bit more. Okay. I'll decide how low I want to bring it. I think in this area it can come all the way to the rocks, but maybe below I'll start breaking it down into sub reflecting shapes, reflecting lines, and some of that tone could blend and smudge out, soften, where some of that light again can appear somewhere in between the rocks, over the rocky edges, little pools of water. I think that's will be more mysterious, more glistening for the water. There's quite a bit of diluted paint there as well, so I will need to wait when it dries to know, is it going to remain as it is, or if I'll need to top it up. Okay, so having some lighter strokes next to some of the reflections and the water, darker shapes in the water immediately makes it appear as a reflection, as the quality of the water. Okay, same if I'll put slightly stronger pale green, pale turquoise color somewhere here. And even if I'll do a very small amount of the water somewhere here. And slightly, almost like an outline. And what I can do here to make it softer, more natural, if I'll use a damp sponge and just soften the bottom edge of that lighter green. That's lovely. Okay. Right, and now as I'm working into my lighter green, I can see some of the smaller lighter clouds. I can work into a similar tone for the moment. And again, as I apply them with a brush, I can soften them with a sponge after I washed it. Had quite a lot of paint on that sponge. So from quite sharp edges on the clouds, I can make them very soft. They still could have some sharp edges remaining, but it makes the shapes of the clouds much more unusual, much more natural, blends it with the environment a bit more where we want it to blend. And I think I will do a little that vortex of clouds coming here. I will need some other tones in it and some other darknesses and some other colors, but I think that will give me a nice starting point. So if I've done some amount of these clouds, and I can soften some of these zigzags, and some of the shapes I can keep remaining as they are. If I've taken off a little bit too much, bring it back with some paint. Quite like that one, so I'll keep that one. And anything here. Same small amount at a time with a brush. And in some places. Okay, that's good. And I just spotted I could do a slightly darker blue as I just spotted on my brush. That's good, right? And then the bottom lower part of that cloud, so everything quite monochromatic here in the sky and in the water. I'll start slowly adding more color to it. But yeah, so let's have a look at the clouds close to the horizon. I think that's our ultramarine quite strongly. I think I could do even more violety tone to that. Let's put that there and make a decision when it's painted in a large area. That's quite good. Slightly lighter version, slightly darker version, slightly more bluey, slightly more violety. And again, while I have a sponge close by, I'll soften this sharper edge. And not all of my horizon has the same tension. Not all of the sky is dark, bordering with the water. It's slightly changing in different areas. The color is changing, what's bordering with the horizon as well. Again, you might not see perfectly the change of color from bluey violet to more violet. Going further into the lighthouse shape because I can repaint the lighthouse. My clouds are happening there now. And I can always just wash the shape of the lighthouse here. And I wanted to soften the sharp edge. Okay, I've not just softened, I also removed part of it. So let's bring it back. Okay. And I think if I were to change again the brush, that lovely bluey violet color with a smaller brush. Just check if some of these areas dry. I'm checking if they're dry. It means that if I need to soften anything with a sponge, that will be easily done rather than me lifting the color by accident. Okay. I'll go for a hint of pink, white, and crimson. Still have some blue present in my bristles in the brush. Some lower cloud of pink, and I think some of these green shapes of light will start having a nice complementary color. Some pink. Well, part of these layers are still wet. That's quite exciting to work with the edges of it. Where the paint is still very wet, for example, in this corner, it's probably quite thick layer, and it blends very differently. I don't want to do pink everywhere, so if there is a lighter tone, it might be much lighter, and some places could be much stronger in pigment. Much stronger in thickness of that white. That's a good time to do some variety of strokes. Okay, maybe this is a little too strong. Flat stroke, so maybe that will make it less perfectly created. Okay, it's a good one so far. Just looking at all of the shapes together. Let's get some more blue, some more ultramarine. Come close for the water. Part of this cloud could disappear as well. Coming close to do my island. So let's decide on its final position. Right, if I'll paint the sky, I think it would be easier for me to rather just leaving it out. Okay. If I'll paint the sky overall first. Again, if I paint it over the lighthouse, I can wash it off. Although I think the lighthouse will need to be slightly slender here. I think that would have been a good color to go over it. Okay, quite a lot of darkness in the sky. At the back, loads of similarity of color. Let's see if I can have a little bit more paler tones. Okay, that's nice. That's lovely. I don't want the line to be too perfect. Maybe of that shadow, I'll break it down. It's quite nicely charged up tones. Okay, maybe I know the horizon's gone a little bit too high, but I think the water line will need to go slightly higher here anyway. Okay. Sorry, you can't see that. Just touching up the horizon a bit more. And maybe some more light emerald green. With some of that fellow blue. And I think that's where we'll need to come closer to the lighthouse base. Something changing there. And the depth. A little more definition for the horizon here as well, next to the lighthouse. I think some of the colors are drying slightly darker than I wanted them on the water. Okay, let's get rid of the dry brushing. Okay, so let's let this area dry gently. I think I'm ready to do a bit more work on the lighthouse. Oh, sorry, on the lighthouse, on the Puffin Island. Just soften that white line as well. Now, if I'm not too sure or haven't made my final decision on certain shapes or details or textures or whatever it is, and I want to visually see it. So for example, my Puffin Island, I haven't decided visually where I'm going to put it. Maybe a bit more central here. That's one option. Maybe slightly on the side is another option. The best thing for me to do is to wait for the area to be dry and then paint it. And if I like it, I'll keep it. If not, I can move it. Or even paint it in two areas and just close one and see the other on their own. My main concern is for this group of rocks not to interrupt or interact too much or remind the shape of that Puffin Island. So maybe as that area is drying, maybe I can work with the shape of the buoy, which is right on the side. Yeah, just gonna be somewhere on the side here. So I can go for some small amount of crimson. And I can see some lovely orangey color in it. If I'll do slightly duller, darker tone for the whole body of the light of the buoy, I can then add a smaller, lighter, warmer tone on top. Just going to make it a bit more substantial, not too runny. I just check if this area is a bit damp as well, but I think I'm quite happy to give it a go. If I'll just visually put my stroke. Okay, so that's going to stay somewhere there. Tiny bit of darkness underneath because it is standing on the rock. So I might have more, if it's not even protruding from the rock is not quite showing much. Maybe the darker line underneath might be there. There might be seaweed growing on it. So once I've done that, I can mix a lighter tone, more orangey looking. So I'll use some ochre. and crimson and some extra white. I'm going to need a little dot, little blob of color on top. So we have the light coming from the left hand side. So if I'll just land a bit of warmth there, that's good. Once it dries, I might just do a tiny bit more darker tone as well, just to offset it as well. That's lovely. Also gives me an opportunity to think of any other warmer, bolder shapes of pink. I think I might just move my image here so I can see it better as well as I'm painting those rocks, and I'll see better in front of me. So give me some more room for my color mixing. So as I picked up some of that red, maybe just slightly stronger color. That would be nice. That will show a very beautiful sunset. Might not be my final colors, but I think I will benefit from having some of them. That's nice and settled. Now I don't want to do it everywhere. So some rock might have more that copper. By the way, behind the corner, just in the corner here on the right hand side, there is an ancient copper mine as well on the shore. So maybe that color will be reflecting in the rock. Some of the most famous geological finds here as well, because that the crack, there is a big deep crack in the water, and how it goes through all of the Anglesey, comes through Penmon and across Anglesey. So geologically the structure is very fascinating. Lots of people come to study it, and there's so much wonderful colors in there because of it. Right, I think I can do with something slightly stronger in color here as well. And the little dabs and dots of red just identifies how those rocks slightly changing their surfaces as they have all the edges showing in the light. And that would be nice to have slightly more color here as well. Maybe not all of these rocks, but some of them protruding from the water. Okay, there's that being a bit too similar, maybe similar elongated, similar direction, similar widths, sponging it. I don't like that one, it's almost like a tail. Okay, so that could be removed. Maybe a bit more on the water and the water softness. And that out of focus tones, again, could be done with a sponge. and then the slightly different sharper tones could come up at a later stage. I'm really happy with some of these nice pinks. I just spotted this pink is a little bit on its own. Maybe it will need to be slightly darker. I think I'll be happier with it being slightly darker as it dries. Okay. That's some nice bold reds coming through. While I was waiting for the Puffin Island area to dry, okay, that's ready. So let's have some fresh paint. For the Puffin Island, I'm gonna have some lighter base, maybe similar to some of these stones. So some ochre, a small amount of red, some violet. Okay, so that's a kind of medium to dark tone. Let's have some lighter version of it. So more white, mainly ochre and crimson. I think that's might be the one. Right, so if I'll put it here, it's going to be in line with my island. If I'll put it here, it will be two centrals in the middle of the painting. I'll put a central point where it's going to be its end. Okay, let's try that. And well, I've got my darker tones. I can immediately go for the darker tones. Dab of green with it. We'll just neutralize some of the reds. Yeah, just a little bit off center. I think we're on the right track. I'll start painting it with too many sharp contrasts. It will start competing with the foreground. So if I'll approach it softly, darker shoreline for it as well, for different vegetation, for different rock forms. Okay, I think the island start being slightly lower than where I wanted to finish on the water, but it's much easier to touch up that water. So I'm not too concerned with that. Just want the colors flow slightly lighter. It's famous landing beach for the boats. Okay, maybe something like that. It's nice little light on the top. I think some of the exposed rock, get that light higher. That's quite exciting island lit up. I'm happy with that. Just slightly darker mark somewhere here on its end. Okay, so if I went a little bit over my water, not too big deal. I can always come back and tidy how close the water could come up. I think it just looks a bit all elongated, a bit too low, and a bit more elongated there as well. But I can do that in no time with some fresh blue. And I think if I were to go with a sponge, it might be much more. Yeah, it's just a little bit difficult to control how close the sponge comes to the edges of the island there. Right, last look at the island. Does anything reminds me of any silly shape? Sometimes that plays a big part. I think this light looks like an eye. I don't want any hedgehogs or any other silly reminding us shapes. Okay. That's nice light traveling in between the cliffs. Okay, let's leave the island there. Lovely. Nice and soft at the same time. Strong enough in its form. Oh, that's even better. Okay. Just that very dark tone gives me an idea to make it slightly lighter. Okay, let's let it dry before I start overdoing it. Start looking like an eye now as well here. Okay. Let's let it dry and come back to it. Right, let's have a look at the lighthouse. Let's have a look at our feature lighthouse. And then start playing with more details on the foreground and the rocks. Come back maybe to the sky. Reminder. Right, so if I look now at the lighthouse, I want to keep it as simple as possible. So I'll work into some of the darker tones now. So if I'll have some red and green, that will make it very dark, maybe even violet as well. That will give me a dark tone without painting with black. It's a bit more violet-y, so let's have maybe some more blue. And it's actually quite violet-y, is nice. Darkish violet-y tone. Okay. Small amount of white will make it slightly paler. I think that's too pale. Let's start with this in between, not overly dark, but a bit more accurately dark enough tone. Right, so I have my lighthouse standing below the horizon. I'll turn my brush so you can see it will be even better. So that's might be roughly my base. It has a almost like a little skirt on its base here. Okay, we'll work into subtones of that area. So far, I want to find the overall simplified shapes of them. Okay, this looks a bit wobbly, but that's okay. My brush will work with the angles a bit more accurately, especially if I'll have a smaller brush. but I want to keep on working with big shapes. When I start doing my subtones, some of the uneven spaces will become much more naturally looking. So far it just looks a bit more standing out on its own. So I'm going to have a little bit of light tone left as that white segment, and then there is another section which has a wider oval and then a narrower one. So then one cylinder moves to another. Okay, if I'll just do it slightly smaller here. Tempting to give it an outline, which I might regret having. And then another one somewhere here. So I've got 2 cylinders. And then the little hat. Again, if I keep it more simplified with a big brush, slightly higher, taller. The ovals are all a bit wobbly. I'm just looking for overall big shape of it. Okay. And what I'll do next, I'll pick up a smaller brush. Like it is. And let's start with some of the highlights on the darker tones. So if I'll pick up some white, and I want to have a bit more rustic type of orangey, browny light, browny violet light. I'm going for slightly lighter tone just to see if my Lighthouse Festival is still wet and it will smudge. Yes, that's quite nice. So I could have much more lighter tone on a corner notes. Overall doesn't make it too bold. Got little steps we can walk on. But I think that lighter tone could have even more brighter sections here. Okay, again, if my corners of the lighthouse gone a little bit wonky, I know I can easily touch it up with some when I start doing the water reflections or touch up the corners. I'm more interested in how all the shapes are building up now. Okay, so some more light, what the tones are like, what the colors are like. Okay, something more stronger here. Maybe mix it with my earlier colors so it's not too jumpy. Okay, possibly slightly in the back. Slowly going to show a bit more of the ovals on one side. I think they're more straight ovals at the bottom. They're getting slightly more curvy at the top here. Okay. And let's find some highlights and some shadows, kind of reflections of shadows. I think for my highlights of the white walls of the lighthouse, we're going to have white and ochre and very, very small amount of pink. Okay, that's very strong. Need to be much lighter than any of my rocks I have already painted. So just enough white. Need to really glow. Okay, so that's gonna come up. I might need to do a couple of layers if needed, if the paint is not going to be strong enough. I want to get rid of my outline I created as I was structuring it. Okay. And the lower level. A little bit crude in shape, but it started to make that difference. Something at the top, maybe slightly lighter, a little corner there, something's going on, maybe reflection, maybe there's some rails, maybe there's some rock exposed. You can also see a similar color as reflection on the water. In case it comes over the water, looks a little bit more warmer, slightly more darker in tone as well. Okay, so that's immediately lands it kind of within that environment. That's quite nice. Just checking if any of those colors need to go any further somewhere else. Okay. Maybe a tiny bit more straight to this corner. I can do little windows afterwards as well, just checking all my kind of graphics of the shapes. Or some of the strokes, if the little corners are missing, sometimes the ovals start building up in the wrong direction or over exaggerated. Okay, let's leave that one there, and let's do the reflection of the light on the other side. Now I have a warmer color. My reflection is going to have a bit more back to greens. So if I have my white, my emerald green, tiny dab of yellow blue, more white. It's slightly darker than my highlight, but not dark as that base of the lighthouse blue. Also against the sky here, looks like it's much darker, but against the lower part of the sky, it looks much bolder and lighter. So let's just put a little more of a tone here and find out for ourselves, maybe slightly more green. I want it to glow. Okay, let's get that oval slightly lower. That's quite nice, actually. Fancy putting maybe some of that green outside. No, it doesn't make much difference. That's okay. Okay, immediately I can touch up the oval where it's gone a little bit too high or too low. Of its darkness. Let's just touch that one up. Okay. I do like that little step, so maybe if I'll put some more dots, that just creates a bit more extra steps there. That's nice. And let's place that same green here and just see how it's going to be against the sky. Would I lose it? Partially, yes. So let's have a stronger bluey green. Again, if I'll do a little step on the side. Okay, that one could be tweaked if then some of the strokes got a little bit too high. Slightly darker rooftop. Bring the shape slower. Okay, that's good. Now what I have lost, I have gently lost the in-between tone here. So if I bring paler green just off the edge. Okay, that's better. And now I can bring my pale ultramarine slightly more even, and while some of the colors are still damp, you can smudge it slightly more together. That's better. It's glowing much better now. Let's put that step back in that water. That's quite nice, having slightly darker edge and a bit of reflection to it. It's good. And again, back to that greeny blue, with more ultramarine color for the reflection in the water. I think ultramarine will be better. So let's just check if it's not too, I don't think it's should be overly dark, especially next to very bold highlight. Yeah, that's probably better. There is zigzaggy reflection. A bit more smudged one way. More precise, a little bit more soft. I like that precision. Maybe a bit more darker on the border. Maybe some similar of that blue coming across from the left. I don't know, maybe against the seaweed or something of some color, just bring it a little softer. Not just two individual lines. And I might just come up just tiny bit more here. Right, I'm much happier with that. And let's do some windows. Maybe the windows will just check in my lighthouse shape. It's not overly leaning. I know my board is coming up and perspective here on the camera. I just put the board up and check it. So after checking, I can see a small amendment is needed for the base, so it doesn't look it's leaning down. And I think I need some more lighter green, lighter sky tone, an actual sky. If my lighthouse top layer is darker in the shadow, that sky will help to differentiate. So that's where that clash is happening. So let's work out the sky and let's gently top up the darkness on the shadow. Of the lighthouse. Good. And now just top up the roof. So small details for important elements, for key features, do take our attention and more precision. Some sort of writing on the side. So what I might do, I think I might get away with a little darker tone marks, which represent maybe some writing, or I think it says go around on the left of the lighthouse. That's quite good. I think this little highlight on the step change its form as well. Right, and my window, I've got a nice smudge here, which I think I'll come back and amend. Put a little light here for the window. Will be exciting to have. With another one, and that smudge could be fixed here as well. Suggestive shapes, sometimes way better and more exciting than too precise. So I can feel the more precise I start to be, the shapes start to fight against each other slightly. So the lighter and more simple I keep them, the better they remain. I think that edge still needs some sort of backing of light. Okay. Let's leave it like that for the moment. Loads of wet surfaces. Okay, from one angle I can see I should be keeping it back. From the other it feels it's leaning. I think my camera angle doesn't help me with overly precise straight and so okay, that's looking a bit better. So let's touch up that window again. Okay, that's looking better. Good. From where I'm sitting, the lighthouse looks straight. Not perfectly sure how it appears in the camera, but it looks really nice and straight on my end. No, I think that's too much. Okay. Just take this one off. Okay, that's good. Good, good, good. Still comparing to the camera, something is going on here. Lovely. Right, let's pay some attention to some of the definitions elsewhere. While I have my small brush, I want to touch up boy here. Maybe the top, the tip there, maybe a little shadow. That might be something simple as that. While I have again small brush and my puffin island is dry, I can come over close, a bit more precise, a bit more accurate just for the edge, and have some extra lighter tone. That's it. So even if it's the color will be slightly different to the water close by, it might be the stormy waves, the little whites of the foam approaching it, might be extra highlights. Just going to soften my strokes. These strokes are drying transparent, so I need to have them slightly thicker applied. That's good. Let's fix this horizon as well. I think again tiny bit more lighter tone, and the cloud, paler cloud, can probably remain there or not. Okay, so some light, some paler green, and let's put slightly darker violety blue above the horizon. I think it's just slightly that's better, so it doesn't interrupt that line. Now this cloud looks a bit of a silly shape, so let's maybe merge it with some of that blue violet color. Okay, now I've got a line. So I'm resolving one problem, gaining another one. So it's constantly checking what shapes been affected and how we can bring them back. So if I wanted some lights on those clouds or some variety, that's okay. Now it's still have the line of horizon quite sharp, but in a different way sharp. That's good. This area of the clouds looks a little similar, so I think a little touch up of the cloud will be good. That's nice. That's all good. Okay, some fresh paint, some dark paint, and I can see part of my horizon just jumped up here as well. Good, 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 good. Now, just realized my lighthouse got a bit more of a tail, got that line, maybe slightly stronger than maybe we need. That's better. It's some sort of varieties happening, but it's not too bold. Right, anything else with a smaller brush? Well, I have some of the paler colors on it. I do like this pale turquoise color. So I'm going to start with that. Small amount of phthalo blue and emerald green. And let's do some subtones. Maybe some more here towards the clouds. Supports our lighthouse as well. And let's just have some soft edges to that cloud with a sponge. Okay. And then it does feel like it's going somewhere into this lower part of a cloud. Those beautiful greens and pinks all interact and interchange. Maybe a slightly lighter dab of tone. Good. Some of those dancing clouds. So those are nuances. How much or how little details we start to add. Not so much even looking at the photograph. From time to time I glance at it, but now I'm working with mainly my existing colors, my existing shapes, what supports each other, how can I gain more contrast or soften something. That's lovely. Love that reflection on the water from the lighthouse. I think if I use very pale, almost fresh white, that greeny color there, kind of much more lighter, and have some dotty, reflective interest point, that makes it a bit more life. It also gives me some support from the light area of the clouds here. And if I'll now top up, almost like drag my brush with little dots. Okay, they're a little bit too wide because the paint is still very wet. So fresh white, just little drags of highlights on the surface. Links nicely. It's kind of almost makes a pathway to the Puffin Island between the lighthouse. Maybe I do carry on that light not as bold, but into some waves close to my lighthouse. That's nice. I like that. It's where those parallel blues I wanted to get rid of could come in and get softened. Okay, so now they start looking a bit more like waves as well, close by. And even lighter. Couple of strokes. Well, that water reflection is helping us. That's good to see it's progressing further and further. Just doing a little bit at a time and stepping away and looking at it and doing a little bit more again and just following where that light could be traveling, how big or small the strokes can be done. That's good. I want to have that light next to the rock. So when I was talking about rocks, I was thinking of border lines. And that's why I started looking at the water, because that's keeps the rock or light or dark or forms it silhouette even more. Okay, that's quite a small brush to do large surface strokes. But it will give me nice indentations into the rock. Building some uneven crevasses and raised areas. That's better. That's much better as well. Good. That lighter green we used here as well could be now gently enlarged in brightness, and I think here as well some of that lighter green. Again, the water will start illuminating much stronger, almost like a little borderlines, almost like surrounding our seaweed here. Not all too perfectly same. And also I'll use a sponge to soften the edges bordering with the water. Leaving little gaps as well of almost leaving out the surface covered with seaweed. Okay, any gaps between these areas? Let's find maybe some hidden pools. So we'll sharpen some of the gaps as well. And I need to be stepping again back away from the painting to see that repetitive marks are not overwhelming or not popping up too often. That's quite nice, lovely reflection here. Okay. So without doing too much definition in this area, or sharpening the rocks as outlines by working with light, I think I've done that area. I'm quite happy with that area, full of reflections, full of exciting elements. So let's sharpen up some of the edges of the rocks here as well. So without working on them as individual pieces, working around their silhouettes. Makes them more alive. That's a little bit too plain shape. Let's see what I can do with it. Those labyrinths of little water edges and little hidden places where the water remained, or keep the rocks slightly damp. Okay, maybe that's just too much. Okay, not sure about that one as well. Okay, let's have a look. Right, so I'm happy with all of that. I'm happy with the sky. Maybe a couple of lighter strokes on the sky. So I don't need to come back to it anymore. So again, smaller brush, but large strokes, kind of charged up, bold strokes. Where's that light is traveling? Little borders of the clouds, just touching up. Almost like little radiating rays of light. And then all I'll need to do on the piece is to do some more definition on my rocks. That's nice, and nice lower cloud formations. tiny bit soften some of it so it's not too jumpy. So the nether areas could jump a bit more stronger. Good. Right, I'll do a tiny bit of highlights on my rocks and then I can finish the rest maybe in my own time, as we have a little bit of time left. So if I will go for some white and ochre, dab of red, mainly white and ochre. Just left, find a little bit of sharper definitions as I was doing it semi on the sky, partially on the water here, to have that slight sharpness. Rebuild in between some of the contrasts of softer tones. Maybe some gentler introductions. Maybe some stronger, larger shapes. And that could be plain. Okay, that's where I was looking at that pinky rock before. But it's partially going in the water, so I want to keep it soft. So as these ones. Okay, so that's what I'll be working more now. More definition on some of these contrasts, possibly maybe on the top, some of these areas. And then a little bit of sharp edges as I was sharpening some of the tones within the water reflections, within the little water pool. And then the painting will be done. Possibly I need to relook at some area with more simplified water at the back on the sea, but I'm really happy with the dynamics of the painting, that kind of lovely vista, that lovely depth of it. So just a bit more time finishing things off, and I'm on the right track there. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you, Julia.
You're very welcome.